Hey everybody, welcome to your first lesson for the year, and today we're going to be talking about how to handle watching a video and taking notes and getting the best out of a flipped classroom. And along with that, we'll talk about some basics of geometry as well. So the first thing I want you to do, and I'm going to ask you to do in all your notes for the rest of the year, is I'm going to ask you to divide your notes up so that third of your paper on the left is this column with the title questions, and the rest, the 2/3 on the right, are where you put your notes. So this column on the left, you're going to, if you get stuck in a lesson, something doesn't really make sense to you, I haven't maybe said something clearly enough for you, you write a question down there so that you don't forget it. You can open your notes up when you get to class the next day, and you can ask me that question when you have the time. You might also use that to your advantage when you're studying. If you see something that you knew how to do at one point, but you can't just remember why you did it, you can write a question there, and again, you can ask me in class. Now, some of you might have been copying all of these words down on your paper while I was talking about the left column, and you might have missed everything I said about what to do with that questions column. Well, the important part about Flipped Classroom is that you can always pause this video, write everything down, then press play and listen to what I have to say. Or if you miss something, or I said it too fast, sometimes that can happen, you can rewind it, watch it again. So you'll figure out what works best for you, but I highly recommend you do some pausing, rewinding, make sure that you get the best out of this. So if you haven't already, you can pause the video and you can copy down this stuff and then listen to what I have to say. So we have three symbols here. Two of them I think you should be familiar with. Maybe you would be with the other as well. Geometry is not just about shapes. We do talk about numbers and have equations. So we're going to need to talk about equality. So two things are equal if they have the same value. So for example, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. Two things are not equal if they do not have the same value. So it's an equal sign with a line through it. An example of that, 2 plus 3 is not equal to 7. And this last one that maybe you are familiar with, but maybe not, is congruent. So an equal sign with the squiggly on top. It means that two objects, and in our case we're going to be talking about segments and lines and shapes, it means they're the same size and they are the same shape. We'll talk more about that. We'll use that throughout the year. These are the basic ideas in geometry. We're going to make all of our shapes and lines out of points. We're going to make our shapes out of points and lines and segments and rays. So we need to know how to name them. So if we want to name a point is a location. Point's always labeled with a capital letter, and we just name it by saying point A. A line is an infinite number of points. That means these arrows here tell us that this line goes on forever and ever to the right and to the left, and there's a point on every little bit of space on that line. Point A and point B are just 2 points on the line that I've decided to show you, and if we have 2 points on a line, then we can name it, and we can call this line AB. So we use the names of the 2 points, and we put this symbol on top. So it kind of looks like a line. A segment is just a piece of a line. It has 2 endpoints. Those are the points that are at each end. And we're going to name a segment by using those endpoints. So my points here are AB again, and I want to show you the difference between a line and a line segment. A line segment uses those capital letters. And then we have we'll call it a line, but it has no arrows on the end. So the difference between a line and a line segment are the 2 arrows. And last but not least, we have a ray AB. It starts at one endpoint, and it goes in the direction of B. So it starts at endpoint A, and this ray is going to go forever and ever in the direction of B. And again, we'll use those points. We'll use the one endpoint. we always put the endpoint's name first. So since the endpoint is A, we'll call this AB, and we draw a ray on top. And the conventional way to write this is so that the arrow is pointing to the right. So even if this ray was pointing up to the top of our screen, we would still name it AB with an arrow going to the right. A special way we're going to talk about segments, and you'll see almost immediately us talking about the lengths of line segments in the next video, is we're going to look at this line segment, and that's, if we wanted to name this line segment, we would use the endpoints C and D, put the symbol on top. So this means segment CD. If we want to talk about the length of this segment, if we want to tell somebody how long it is, we're going to use the endpoints. Say it's equal to 8 centimeters. And there's going to be no symbol on top of this. If we have two endpoints written, like I have here, CD, with no symbol on top, then we know we're talking about the length of that segment, CD. It's how far D and C are apart, and in this case, it's 8 centimeters. So I told you a couple slides ago that we were going to use the congruent symbol, and if you want to keep from copying that word congruent down all the time, you can just use the symbol that we have, the equal sign with the squiggly on top. And congruent objects are objects that are the same size and the same shape. So here we have two segments. That means they're the same shape. Sorry for the interruption, that'll happen every once in a while. They have the same shape, they're line segments, and you can see here that they have the same size. They're 7 inches long each. So if we want to show on these two segments using some sort of symbol or representation that they're congruent, all we're going to do is going to put a slash on each of them. So if you ever see two line segments with a slash like that on each of them, and in the book they'll be red, which is why I used red, that means that these two things are congruent. It means that they have the same length. So even if it didn't say 7 and 7, if there was no length labeled there, and all I saw were these two slashes, that would tell us that those two segments are congruent. We're going to use angles all year, talk about angles all year, so we need to understand angles. You might already. Angles are two rays that meet at a common endpoint. So B is that common endpoint. We have ray BA, and we have ray BC. They both share the endpoint B, and they form this angle. And the angle is the amount of degrees that it would take to swing this ray BC all the way over to BA. And we have a special name for B. That's called the vertex point. And these rays, BA and BC, we call those sides. So we can show congruence on angles as well, and there's two ways to do it. You can use what's comfortable for you, and then I'll tell you which way they'll use a lot in the book. So it might be best for you to use that way. So we can see that angle LMN and angle ABC have the same measure. They are both 37 degrees. They're both angles, and they're both the same measure, so they are congruent, same size, same shape. So we can show that. We can show that by making, and we'll call this an arc. We'll talk more about arcs in a little while this year. We'll make an arc there and an arc there. And even if we got rid of these degree measures, and I'll do that. So even if we got rid of those degree measures here, these symbols would let us know, they would indicate to us that these angles were the same size and the same shape. So that's the way that the book uses, and that's the way that most of the tests use. So I would use that way. But you can also, if we get more than one pair of congruent angles, we're going to end up doing some more arcs, and I'll get into that further when we get to the next lesson. But sometimes people like to make those arcs and then use the slashes like we did on the segments. So I want you to pause the video now. So if you're at home if you were at home watching this, you're in class right now watching this, you would pause the video right here and you would name each of these figures. You press play and I will tell you what they're named. So since we have endpoints on this one, this is line XY. I'm sorry, not endpoints, they go on forever. Here we have endpoints XY. We have one endpoint and then it goes on forever in the other direction. That's ray XY. Again, I would ask you to pause the video. If you're sitting at home, I'll pause it for you. I want you to write these down, and I want you to show HI is congruent to JK, and I want you to show that those two angles are congruent. So in order to show these are congruent, I just put a slash through them, like so. And to show these two angles are congruent, we're putting arcs there. So again, remember, if I did something at all and you didn't understand it, you should be writing that question down here so that you can ask it later. So at the end of every video, we'll have what I like to call the you do problems. That means you're going to do them, and then you're done. You do them. I'm not going to go over the answers because what happens is you're going to come into class the next morning, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at the solutions to the you do problems and see if you got them right. So here I have two problems. It won't usually be more than 5 problems at the end of a lesson, depending on how long the lesson was. And I'm going to ask you to do those. They are not going to be graded for correctness, but you will lose points on your notes if you don't have them done. So do them. It'll only take you a couple minutes, and then you can check to see the next day if you understand the lesson, you understand what I talked about. So in the first question, I want you to name each figure like we did previously in the lesson. And on number 2, I'd like you to show me that those segments are congruent like we just did and we did previously in the lesson. And we'll go over them later.